Cool. So it's 6-1, guys. We'll quickly start. Firstly, good evening, everyone. I'm hoping everybody is having a good day today. Yeah. So we're back with the second part to revise chapter 6, which is Bhakti-Sufi traditions, apparently the most difficult chapter of the term 1 syllabus, right? So we're here to do the part 2. We already done part 1 on Wednesday. It was pretty smooth. Whatever doubts we have, we've cleared. In the same way, if you all have any doubts regarding the part 2 of it, please keep texting in the chat box, right? We can clarify them one by one. So, yeah, firstly, good evening. I'll quickly do a round of intros, and I'm hoping in the meanwhile other people will join. Cool. So I'll just start off by introducing myself. As most of you all know, my name is Nikitha, and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a major in history and a minor in political science. So, um, and quickly talking about Unacademy's plus features, you can actually sit at your own houses and listen to the live classes taught by top educators of India. All of them are available on one single platform. There's unlimited access to all of these courses. Then there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests, and live test series as well. Then the syllabus is exhaustively covered by every educator at Unacademy Plus. There's mentorship provided to you, there is guidance provided to you, along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDF. So here when we come to pricing for Plus, the prices you can see on the left side of the screen, these ones are the original prices, and you have different ranges for them starting from 6 months to 24-month ka subscription. And if you use the code TUM10, you'll be basically given a 10% off on the subscriptions, and these prices on the right are the post discounted prices. So you can avail that by using the code. So quickly moving on to Iconic. Here you'll be given personal mentorship. Then there are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. So when it comes to Iconic, we have 9 different subscriptions starting from 3 months to almost 48 months. So again, the same thing, the prices on the left are the actual prices. You can use the code to get a 10% off, and these are the post discounted prices, right? So have a look at them and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. And yeah, there's something else called as Bugs Bounty, a special feature of Unacademy. It's basically an opportunity for you learners to report any sort of inappropriate content in the video. You can be the first to report it and also claim a prize for that. And you can do that reporting by using the form which is in the description below of this video. Go check that out. And finally, there's something called as Emerge. As most of you know, it's a test conducted by Unacademy. This test is basically aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines. So it'll act as some sort of practice for your term 1 boards. So I highly recommend you all to take one of these. It usually happens every week, right? So again, the link for that is in the description below of this video. So go check that out and enroll yourselves. Highly helpful. Okay, cool. So that being said, I think we can quickly dive into the topic for today. Okay, a couple of you all joined right now. So good evening everyone who just joined. Okay, I think we can go ahead, but like as I was telling you all before, this might be a little bit difficult when compared to other chapters. So just whenever you have doubts, just put them in the chat box, right? We can clear them ASAP. Okay, so cool. Aditi is here with us. Good evening, Aditi. Hi. Okay, so I'll quickly dive in straight. The last slide we were discussing in the previous classes is talking about the women devotees, especially in the traditions of Alvars and Niners, right? Women also played a crucial role, and the mere existence of powerful women in itself is a challenge to the patriarchal society, right? So that's the last point we ended the last class with. So after that, the next sub-theme we'll be discussing is relations with the state, right? So yeah, exactly, Aditi. Today's topic is going to be we starting off with relations with the state, like what kind of relations did these religious groups have with the state and how the state responded, right? So we'll be talking about a little bit of them and also the conditions that were prevailing in the northern part of India when all of this was happening in the south, right? So those are the two topics for today, Aditi. They are quite exciting, so they are interesting to a certain extent. So yeah, we'll dive straight. Okay, so while we were discussing kings, farmers and towns, I think that's chapter 2 in your textbook, we looked at so many chiefdoms that were emerging in the Tamil region, right? For example, Cheras, Pandyas, Cholas, all of these were considered as chiefdoms but not as kingdoms, right? Again, we've discussed what are the differences between chiefdoms and kingdoms, right? So they were coming up in the first millennium CE, as most of us know. So again, like especially in the second half of the first millennium, right? Like starting from 6th century CE, there are two important states which became very significant because of their military might and good administrative capabilities. One of them is Pallavas. Yeah, we've heard this dynasty's name so many times. So just remember Pallavas and also Pandyas were two important chiefdoms which were becoming important from 6th to 9th centuries, right? So Buddhism, those are the state conditions in the second half of the first millennium. But what is the religious condition, right? So okay, Aditi has a question asking what is first millennium. Uh, okay, firstly, millennium means a set of 1,000 years, right? Just like how century is 100, decade is 10. In the same manner, millennium is 1,000 years, right? So when I'm referring to first millennium, I'm talking about the time frame between first year and the 1,000 year of the CE period. After Christ, just after Christ was born, the first year till the 1,000 year is called the first millennium, right? So if you calculate that way, as of now, we are in the third millennium CE, right? Because we are in 2021, we are in the third millennium CE. Yeah, so I'm hoping you got the point, Aditi. Okay, so moving to the religious conditions of what was happening in the first millennium, right? We've already seen in the 4th chapter that Buddhism and Jainism are two important religions that were coming up, very, very popular, spreading very fastly, right? So these have been there for so many centuries. They have been there in the Indian subcontinent. In some situations, they're also been receiving royal patronage, which means kings are also supporting these religions. That's basically nothing but royal patronage, right? So these have been there, but as time passed by, not just Buddhism and Jainism, but also some other religions, for example, Alvars and Niners, right? Alvars and Niners are devotees of Shiva and Vishnu, totally different from Buddhists and Jainists. So when these new sect of people started coming up, they kind of hated Buddhists and Jainists. Yeah, they did not like them. They were in totally opposition. And how do we know that? Because if you read any of these poems composed by Alvars and Niners, you will clearly understand that they hated Buddhists and Jainists, right? So through the poems, we understand that there is some kind of hatred between Buddhist Jainists versus Alvars and Niners, right? So that's the religious scenario. Even within like Alvars and Niners, right? Like Niners, in the composition of the Niners, they particularly hated Buddhists and Jainists. Yeah. So there has to be a reason for this hostility. There has to be a reason for why are they hating each other so much, right? So we do have an answer for that. Yeah, historians have done a lot of research. They came to a conclusion that the reason as to why there is so much of hatred between them is because of the competition. Again, what kind of competition is this? Competition to get the royal patronage. Right? Royal patronage back in those days is very, very important because that is how your religion can be spread to different people. Right? So, for example, I'm the king and I'm supporting Alvars and Niners instead of Buddhists and Jainists. Then obviously Buddhists and Jainists will not like them, will not like me. Right? They also want the king's royal patronage because that will be very helpful for them. So this kind of competition to gain the royal patronage from the king, it is because of that that there are so many conflicts between these groups. Right? So that's an important point. Please make note of that. Yeah, so we look at some of the examples, right? Like, in what situations are they not getting or getting royal patronage? For example, Chola rulers, very, very powerful rulers, right? They ruled from 9th to almost 13th century. Chola rulers were basically Hindus. They supported all these Brahmanical religions and Bhakti traditions, right? They even made land grants to these religious institutions. They started constructing temples. Yeah, they were in huge awe of Shiva and Vishnu, right? And when I'm talking about temples, these are not like small temples. These are magnificent Shiva temples. Even now, like if anybody of y'all have visited temples in Tamil Nadu, for example, Tanjavur temple or Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple or even Chidambaram temple for that matter. Yeah, these are huge, these are magnificent, right? And all of them were funded by the Chola rulers themselves. So what do we see here? The traditions of Vishnu and Shiva are spreading. People actually started believing in Vishnu and Shiva because there are so many temples, because king is sponsoring them, right? So obviously Buddhists and Jaina people did not like them, did not like whatever was happening because they also want that royal patronage, right? But nonetheless, this is the kind of conflicts that were happening back in those times. Yeah. So this was also the time that representations of Shiva in bronze sculpture were produced. This is a new development, right? Till then, only statues were made up of either mud or sandstone or some kind of rigid material, right? For the first time, metal was being used to carve the sculptures of gods, especially Shiva, right? In this case, it is bronze, which is a costly material to a certain extent when compared to other materials, right? So that in itself is also a development. Again, who is sponsoring all this? King is sponsoring all this, right? The rulers are sponsoring all this, which obviously Jaina people and Buddhist people did not like, right? So that was the basic religious scenario that was happening back in those times. It's fairly simple, but like in case you'll have any questions, please let me know in the chat box. Okay, Ansh is here with us. Hi Ansh, good evening. Okay, if there are no questions, then probably I'll go ahead. Cool. So, apart from the kings, right, there will obviously be some powerful communities living within the empire. And in the Chola Empire case, yeah, there was a powerful community called as Vellala peasants. Very powerful community, right? Like rich landowners. They had so many acres of land under them. Yeah. So these Vellala peasants, they are also supporting Niners and Alvars. Yeah, huge supporters. Even they funded sometimes for the construction of the temples for Shiva and Vishnu, right? So obviously, rulers are also supporting, Vellala peasants are also supporting. There's so much of fame and name for Nayanar traditions and Alvar traditions, right? So obviously rulers tried to win their support as well. They wanted to. So what is the basic aim of the rulers, right? At the end of the day, they want to impress their subjects, people living within the kingdom, also people outside the kingdom, the other rulers, right? So in this case, rulers were trying to basically win over these Vellala peasants, right? Because they'll be of some sort of help to the kings at some point of time. Yeah. So for example, the Chola kings, right? Again, Chola example, they often attempted to claim divine support. They proclaimed themselves as God, right? They treated themselves as some kind of equivalent figures to the god. They started, just like we've seen in other chapters, even Chola kings sometime sculpted their own figures and started installing them in the temples just beside the statues of gods, right? So by doing such activities, they tried to show to the people that they themselves are gods, or they have some sort of divine energy within them, right? That is how they are able to showcase their power and status. Yeah. Added to that, they also built all of these huge temples, magnificent temples, right? Not just with like plain sand and bricks and stuff. It was highly decorated. It was decorated with all of these beautiful stones, which are costly again. Yeah. Metal was also used, like gold, silver, bronze and all, again costly, right? So all of these activities were done by Chola kings in order to impress the community. Yeah. Okay. Ansh has a question. Yes, Ansh, what is it? Again, like as I've said, you don't need to ask me every time. Just put down your question. Yeah. Just type it down, Ansh. In the meanwhile, I'll say another point. Um, okay. And there were also some kind of hymns or compositions of poems, right, which were widely sung in these temples. Yeah, that's how they worship God. That is one form of worshipping God, right? So these type of songs and poems and all, they were sung in all of these Shiva and Vishnu temples. In fact, king actually ordered the temple authorities that they have to sing these songs in the temples, right? So that's an order given by the kings to the temple authorities, that all of these hymns have to be sung in the temples of both Shiva and Vishnu, right? And these compositions were later organized or collected into a particular text called as Tevaram. Again, very important point in terms of MCQs for your questions. So if they ask you like what is that one text where all of these Shiva hymns are, like Shaivism hymns are compiled, the answer is Tevaram, right? So remember that. Okay. Okay, Nikki is here with us. Hi, Nikki. Okay, Ansh has a question. Similarities and differences between Bay Sharia and Ba Sharia Sufi tradition. Very simple, right? Like just one point explanation is needed for this. Ansh, Bay Sharia is basically people who are supporting the Sharia, like be it Sharia traditions, be it Sharia law, right? So people in support of Sharia are called as Bay Sharia, and people opposing Sharia are the other category of people, right? So one group are supporting Sharia, the other group are opposing Sharia. Okay? Again, basic simple definition. But like in case you need like specifics of it, then probably like I think in the next class we'll talk about Bay Sharia and Ba Sharia. Then we'll deal with it in detail. Yeah. Okay, you got it basically. Uh, Good evening, Nikki. Cool. I'll go ahead if there are no questions. But please remember the Tevram point, guys. Really important. Yeah. Okay, so we will look at one of the inscriptional evidence which was from around 945 CE, right, towards the end of first millennium. So this inscription actually suggests that a Chola ruler by name Parantaka I, again important, remember his name. His name is Parantaka I. He is a Chola ruler and his information is known from the 945 inscriptions, right? So like what is written in that inscription, right? So an inscription gives us information that Upper Sambandar and Sundarar, these are basically the saints belonging to Shiva traditions, right? So their images made up of metals have been installed in the Shiva temples. See, basically Upper Sambandar and Sundarar, these are not gods, right? These are one of the 12 niners. Yeah. So out of these 12 niners, Upper Sambadar and Sundarar are famous. Yeah. They've gained more importance. So these figures made up of especially metals have been installed in the Shiva temples. Again, what does this signify? That this ruler by name Parantaka I, he is a very staunch follower of Shaivism, right? He's also worshipping all of these 12 Shiva saints. Yeah. So that information we get from the 945 inscription. And obviously they were carried in processions during the festivals of these saints. Whenever there are any festivals, right? Like even today, if you visit some of the rural areas and all, during festivals like Diwali, Dashra, any other like random Hindu festivals, by the end of the day, after the puja is done, all of these statues are taken in the streets, yeah, for processions, right? Processions are nothing but a lot of people accompanying the statue of God, and they just roam around the whole neighborhood, right? So these are called processions, yeah. So these figures of Upper Sambandar and Sundarar, even though they are not gods, during festival times, even their statues were carried in processions, right? So they also have a lot of importance basically. Yeah. So that's that. Any questions still here, guys? Any questions? Let me know. Otherwise, we can go ahead. Okay. Cool. So that's the end of like second subtopic in your textbook, right? We'll move on to the next one, which is titled as the Veera Shaiva tradition in Karnataka, right? As the title suggests, this tradition is very explicit to Karnataka. It did not spread beyond Karnataka, to be very honest, right? Only like local people followed this tradition. Again, as the name suggests, this is some sort of worshipping of Shiva itself because it's a Shaiva tradition, but like a modified form of Shaiva tradition. And that is why we are calling it as Veera Shaivism or Veera Shaiva tradition, right? So this actually came up in 12th century, not before that. Yeah, it was started by a person called as Basavanna. Yeah, he himself was born in 12th century. To be very specific, in 1106 AD, died in 68. Right? He led a decent life. Yeah, he was a Jain initially, like he followed Jainism for a while, and then he was a Brahmin. Right? And then at some point of time in his life, he also worked as a minister in the court of a Chalukya king, right? So his life was fairly simple, but again at some point of time he established this new tradition called as Veerashaivism in the 12th century in Karnataka, right? So there were obviously followers for him. Yeah, so many people followed, so many people were influenced because of Veerashaivism, and there is a particular name to address his followers. Yeah, one name is that they are called as Veerashaivas, and if you translate it, it means heroes of Shiva. right? Or they're also called as Lingayats because they're wearers of the linga. Again, I'm assuming everybody knows what a linga is. So these Veerashaiva people, they basically wear that linga on their body, on their shoulders or on their waist, at some part of the body. They usually wear these lingas. That's why they're called as wearers of lingas or Lingayats, right? So his followers were basically known as Veerashaivas or Lingayats. And till date, like even in the 21st century, if you visit Karnataka, you will find that there are so many people who still follow this tradition. There are still so many Lingayats in Karnataka. Again, like if you just have some grip on the current affairs or like some currently happening scenarios, these Lingayat communities, they're always in the news for some or the other reason, right? Like because they wanted to have all of these reservations, yeah, like some political issues. So which means basically Lingayats are still very large in number even today in the Karnataka region, right? Uh, okay. Again, they worship Shiva, but like what is the difference between Shaivites and Veerashaivites? There has to be some difference, right? So when it comes to Veerashaivites, they do worship Shiva, but the way in which they worship Shiva or the manifestation of Shiva is different. They don't worship the human form of Shiva. Instead, they are attracted towards the Linga figure. Right? Again, back to Linga. Very important for Veerashaivites. Right? So Linga played a very crucial role. Like they worshipped it at the same time they also started wearing it on their body parts. Right? So how do they usually wear it? There is some sort of thread which runs from their shoulders, especially from the left shoulder, right? And there's a small silver case in which there's the linga. It's some sort of strung by a loop. Small, like pretty small, yeah? They're like somehow hanging towards your waist. So that kind of lingas were worn by Lingayats, and the main difference is they worshipped Shiva in the manifestation of a linga and not in a human form, right? So I'm hoping that point is clear again. Remember the difference between Shaivism and Veerashaivism, right? Okay, and last point of the slide, those here revered include the Jangama or wandering monks. Again, some extreme people, they like gave up all of these worldly pleasures, they didn't marry, they just became monks in the process of worshipping Shiva in the linga form, right? So they are like revered communities. People usually people actually treated these wandering monks, also known as Jangama in local language, right? People started respecting them because obviously they are saint-like figures, right? Okay, so that's Veerashaiva tradition. Now we'll kind of look at some of the features of Veerashaiva traditions, right? What did they support? What did they not support? Were they against anything, right? So we'll look at some points related to that. So firstly, Lingayats, right? People will die as humans. At some point of time, all of us will die. So Lingayats actually believed that once a human dies or once a devotee of Shiva dies, he's not going to be reborn. There's no concept of rebirth, right? He will not return to this world again. After death, he will directly be united with Shiva, right? That is one philosophy which they believed in. The whole base on which the Veerashaivism philosophy was founded is that there is no theory of rebirth, right? And that is exactly the reason that they did not burn the dead bodies, right? Dharma Shastras actually tell that as a Hindu or as a follower of Shiva, you're supposed to burn the dead bodies. But Veerashaivites were actually opposing this. Instead of burning, they actually buried these dead bodies. Right? Even Christians do that. Christians don't burn. Christians bury the dead bodies. Right? So that's another feature of Veerashaivites. They ceremonially buried their dead. Yeah. And Lingayats were also kind of opposing these Brahmanical groups because Brahmins were very oppressive. They founded this oppressive caste structure, like fourfold caste system, and they also treated these untouchables as polluted people, right? They were not allowed to enter the village, they were not allowed to touch other people, so many other restrictions, right? Lingayats were totally against all of these Brahmanical traditions. They were like, these are baseless, they don't have any, they don't make any sense. So Lingayats were totally challenging all these Brahmanical ideas of caste and pollution, right? And as I was mentioning, they questioned the theory of rebirth. Yeah, once you die, you'll directly go to Shiva. There's no concept of rebirth. Yeah, and because of all these features, that is why Veerashaivism tradition was successful in attracting so many followers, especially from the marginalized communities of the Brahmanical social order, because people are being oppressed, right? Brahmins are not treating all of these Shudras and untouchables well. They are just done, like they're mentally tired, right? So they are in search of a new tradition, and that is when all of these Shudras and untouchables found this Veerashaivism. And immediately they got attracted to Veerashaivism and they became followers of Veerashaivism, right? So that is how it was able to attract so many followers. Yeah. Okay. Nematullah is back. Hi. Good evening, Nematullah. Ronak is also here. Hi, Ronak. I'm doing very well, Ronak. Thanks for asking. How are you? Okay. In case you have any questions, guys, let me know. We can clear them out. We still have like 2 points of the slide. So again, it was totally against the idea, some ideas mentioned in Dharma Shastras as well. For example, post-puberty marriage and the remarriage of widows. Dharma Shastras actually say that once a girl is past that stage of puberty, she's not allowed to marry. That is why before 15-14 years itself, the girl is supposed to marry. And once her husband dies, the widow is not supposed to remarry. These are some of the features mentioned in the Dharma Shastras. But Lingayats were totally against these traditions. They were like, a girl can marry at any point of time she wants to, and even if her husband is dead, she has the right to remarry. Yeah, that's what Lingayats support and in fact practiced. Yeah. So again, like, how do we know about Lingayats, or how do we know about all of these Veerashaiva traditions? The only source of information we have is Vachanas. Again, what is Vachanas? Again, the term of Vachanas itself, if you literally translate, it's called sayings, right? The Vachana spelling is here. So it's nothing, right? Like Basavanna, whatever he said, and also his followers, whatever they said orally, after some point they were written down. Yeah, they were written down by some other scholars. So that is the only source of information we have as to what this Veerashaiva tradition was. We don't have any inscriptions, we don't have all of these huge documents, right? Nothing is available for Veerashaiva tradition. It's just the Vachanas, right? So yeah, that's about Lingayats, guys. Fairly simple but also important concept when it comes to term 1 boards. So I highly recommend you all to just reread this Lingayats part. Highly beneficial. Again, Aditi has a question. Lingayat in short. Again, just like how to remember Lingayats, right? Mainly 2-3 points. Yeah. Number 1, you can remember that it's a Shiva. They are the worshippers of Shiva, as the name suggests, but they worship Shiva in the manifestation of a linga. That's point number 1, which you need to remember. Yeah. Point number 2 is they were against the Dharma Shastra philosophies. For example, burning of dead bodies, post-puberty marriages, remarriage of widows. So these are all mentioned in Dharma Shastras. So Lingayats were basically against Dharma Shastras. Right? That's point number 2. And yeah, like point number 3 is the only source available to us is Vachanas. Yeah. And yeah, these are the 3 main points you need to remember, but like other extra information like theory of rebirth, Basavanna, 12th century are also important, right? So just make down like pointers, right? It will be easy for you all while you are revising these chapters. Yeah, or we can do this in some other classes like the pointer section. Yeah. Okay. Any questions still here regarding Lingayats or Veerashaivism? Please let me know. We can talk about that. Nematullah, honestly speaking, or at least if you are asking for my advice, I would highly recommend to not look at any source books. Yeah, to just not buy random history materials, not necessary. I highly recommend you all to rely only on the textbook, your part 1, 2, 3 textbook, and the first 6 chapters you have for term 1. Just rely on the textbook, thoroughly read every page, every paragraph, and in fact every line of your textbook, right? That in itself is more than enough. You don't have to like juggle between so many books. Yeah, that's my advice. And just keep revising, right? Just read your textbook, keep attempting quizzes, make a notes for yourself because your handwriting is more legible to you, right? So that sort of things are helpful. So I wouldn't suggest any extra references, Nematullah. Okay. Yes, only NCRTs is enough, basically. Yeah, you got the point. Okay. If there are no questions regarding Veerashaivism or Lingayats, then we'll move on to the next topic where we'll talk about the religious ferment in North India. Right? Uh, yes, Aditi, you're absolutely right. That's in fact a good choice you made for yourself. Okay, so till now we've majorly been talking about the southern Indian regions, right? We were referring to Cholas, Chalukyas. We also talked about Veerashaivism and all. Yeah, so these are basically topics or like points we were talking about the southern Indian region. So when all of this was happening in South India, what is the scenario in the northern India, especially in terms of religion? Right? What is the culture? What is the religion being followed in North India at the same time? Yeah. So we'll look at the North Indian part in the next couple of slides. Right? Okay. Yash is back. Hi Yash. Good evening. Okay. So North India, right? Fairly again. Shiva, Vishnu, common deities, right? Like Shiva and Vishnu were very famous throughout the Indian subcontinent. Not just in south, but people in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent also. They are huge followers of Vishnu and Shiva. They have been building so many temples. They have so many followers, right? Same scenario. But there are some category of people like Alvars and Niners in South India. Yeah, Alvars and Niners came up very, very early. In the first millennium only, Alvars and Niners were present in South India. But if you look at the northern part, there is nobody equivalent to Alvars and Niners in the North India till the 14th century. Right? It's just plain Vaishnavism and plain Shaivism. Yeah, no modifications or no poet saints like Alvars and Niners. That didn't happen in the northern part till the 14th century. Right? But like why didn't that happen? Like what is the difference for that in the northern and southern part? So we'll look at what is the difference. Yeah. Okay, so some historians, after doing a lot of research, after studying so many books, they actually point out that North India especially in the first millennium ending and the second millennium starting, there are several Rajput states that were coming up. So many states, right? Like Jodhpur, Marwar, Mewar, all of these are Rajput states or Rajputana states that were emerging in the northern part, especially in the Rajasthan, Gujarat region. So certain parts of Punjab and Madhya Pradesh as well. Yeah, so these were coming up, and because Rajput states are Hindu states, yeah, because they claim that these Rajput rulers are coming from Brahmanical caste, that is why Brahmins held a very important position in the Rajput states. Yeah, they have been given all of these important positions, not just in religious affairs but also in state affairs like political affairs, in the court as well. All of these Brahmins used to take up important positions, like they were the ministers, they were the finance ministers, yeah, like different law ministers and stuff. Yeah, so basically point is Brahmins were given a lot of importance and the rulers themselves were Brahmins. That is why it has become difficult to challenge the Brahmanical position very openly. Yeah, that is the difference between North and South India. Again, to recap it, right, in just to like go over it again, if you look at southern part, all of these Jainism, Buddhism, all Veerashaivism and all, they are basically opposing Brahmanical traditions. Even Alvars and Niners, to a certain extent, they opposed these Brahmins because there is no Brahmanical dominance in South India. But on the other hand, if you look at North India, there is so much of Brahmanical dominance in terms of Rajput states. That is why there is no open challenge to the Brahmins. Yeah, so I'm hoping that point is clear. Yeah, again, this difference is important, guys, so like please make a note of that. Okay, cool. So moving on to the next slide. At the same time, right, like other religious leaders who did not function within the orthodox Brahmanical framework were gaining ground. Again, when is this happening? This is happening when Rajput states are slowly seeing a downfall. Yeah, they are not performing well. Brahmins are not able to like assert their dominance. At that point of time, there are certain other groups, for example, Naths, yeah, or Yogis and Siddhas. These are different groups who basically functioned outside the orthodox Brahmanical framework, right? I wouldn't say they were completely against Brahmins or they are challenging Brahmins, but they just did not function within the Brahmanical framework, right? They considered themselves external to Brahmin framework, right? So these were some of the categories of people or like different traditions, let's say, which started coming up in the northern India. Yeah. So these Naths, Jogis and Siddhas, they were from all categories. They are not Brahmins, right? In fact, they were from artisanal groups, weavers, yeah, different craft production groups and different social backgrounds. And that is why, because they are mostly from artisanal groups, it became important for them that there's a development of the organized craft production, right? Because of people coming together like Naths, Jogis and Siddhis, they are coming together actually for religious purposes. But because of these religious relations, because of personal relations between one another, they are also able to perform better in their day-to-day social work, professional work. They're able to organize their craft production properly because all of these people have personal relations between them. Yeah, so that's an advantage. Yeah. Okay, any questions still here, guys? Thanks, Nehmatullah. That's good to hear. Thank you. Okay, if there are no questions, I'll move ahead, guys. But in case y'all have any questions, just feel free to pop them up in the chat box. Yeah. Okay. Again, because of organizing these craft production and all. Okay, see, the point I'm trying to make here is, because there are relations between people in the religious sector, in the religious forum, because of religion, people are coming together. Yeah, because people are coming together, they also have different advantages in different spheres. For example, professional sphere, because they're able to organize craft production, and they're also able to trade properly because of these organized craft production. Yeah, internal trade was good, external trade was happening, like long distance trade, especially with the Central Asia and West Asia, right? So there's like a chain process happening from the religious sphere to the professional economic sphere, right? So yeah, so that's the demand was growing because of organized craft production. And yeah, Nematullah, you can, like, you don't need to like put it in the chat box saying I have a question, just randomly pop it there. Yeah, now keep typing your question. In the meanwhile, I'll just wind up this one point. Yeah. um okay, so many of these new religious leaders, for example, like Naths, Jogis, and Siddhas, they question the authority of the Vedas, right? So they're not portraying themselves to be in total opposition to the Brahmanical tradition, but at the same time, they are slowly coming out and portraying that, the Vedas or Dharma Shastras and all, why do they have to be authoritative, right? These are normal texts written by normal human beings. Yeah, because people created them, people can also change them. Yeah, those are the points or like valid arguments made by these new religious leaders, right? And in order to like reach people, in order to gain more audience and followers, they started expressing themselves in the local languages spoken by ordinary people, right? Brahmins and all, they used Sanskrit. Nobody could understand it. Honestly, nobody could understand it. Yeah, because ordinary people did not know how to speak Sanskrit. But what are these new religious leaders doing is, they started catering to the audience or ordinary people by using the local languages, right? So that is one good thing that these new leaders have done to gain followers. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a very good point, Abhijit. I was actually going to refer to this book only. Thanks for reminding me of that. Again, guys, like, if you just pay attention to what Abhijit said. Again, this is a point of debate because some people actually believe in religion. Yeah, so it's always like an ongoing debate between scientists and religious people, right? Scientists have their own method of explaining the way of life, like how did religion come up, is it valid, is it not? Yeah, but on the other side, religious people obviously defend their stance, saying no, religion is a very important thing because God created all of us. Yeah, it's like an ongoing debate between a set of scholars. Yeah, again, all of us are free to take our own sides, or we are very free to have our own opinions, right? So again, Abhijit, like whatever you've mentioned, that's what the book says. The book by called Sapiens, that's what the book says. You might agree with the author, you might not agree with the author, right? So it's totally up to you. But that's a very valid point. I think I believe by that. Yeah. Cool. Fair enough. Okay. Cool point, Aditi. So, if there are no questions relating to this particular slide, then I'll move on to talk about the next. Fair enough, Aditi. That's a good point. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about the Brahmins and new religious leaders, right? So, new religious leaders, by using the local languages, by using ordinary people ka languages, they have been able to attract audience. Yeah, they have so many followers, but they were not in a position to win the support of the ruling elites, because ruling elites, they themselves were Brahmins, Rajputs, right? Especially they were Brahmins. So why do you think Brahmins will stop supporting their own Brahmanical community and start supporting Naths and Yogis? They won't do that, right? Like, technically that's not possible. So that is why these new religious leaders, even though they have a lot of supporters in terms of ordinary people, they haven't been able to gain the support of the ruling elites, kings, right? Okay, that was happening in terms of Naths, Jogis, Siddhis, and Brahmanical traditions. But at the same time, yeah, especially we're talking about the 13th century now, yeah, in the same situation, a new element was coming up, which is the Turks, right? Turks definitely are not Indians. They were from the Turkish land. Yeah. Somehow they got converted to Islam when Islam started spreading outside of Arabia. Yeah. Which all of us have learned this in 11th class, going back to Central Islamic lands in 11th class, right? If you all remember how all this Islam spread and all, you'll remember how Turks converted to Islam. So once these Turks actually entered India in the 13th century, and they have established very successfully their own sultanate called as Delhi Sultanate, right? Sayyid rulers, Lodi rulers, yeah, all of these people are belonging to the Delhi Sultanate. And after that, Mughals came in. That's a history we'll discuss as a part of term 2 syllabus. But for now, just remember that in the 13th century, Delhi Sultanate people established their rule in India, right? So that happened, and because of this new element, Rajput states actually started getting affected. If Rajput states get affected, Brahmins are also affected. Again, why is this happening? Because Turkish people, these Delhi Sultanate people, they have been repeatedly invading these Rajput states. Sometimes they were successful in conquering these Rajput states. Yeah, that is why the power of the Rajput states is being undermined because of the Delhi Sultanate invasions. Yeah, and because of that, again, what's happening? Because Turkish people are Muslims, Rajput people are Hindus. When Turkish people are actually invading Hindu states, people are forced to convert to Islam, right? Don't you think once the Delhi Sultanate people actually established their rule in Rajasthan or these Rajput states, at some point or the other, these rulers, these Delhi Sultanate rulers, they will force the ordinary people to convert their religion, right? So because of all these certain scenarios, there are huge changes happening in the cultural and especially religious sphere, right? Conversion started happening, new religions have been coming up. Yeah. So amidst all of these changes, the coming of Sufis into the Indian subcontinent is one of the significant developments. Again, we'll read who Sufis are, what did they do, were there kinds of Sufis, or it's just one monolithic group. Yeah, we'll look at who Sufis are in the next couple of slides or in the next classes, right? But for now, just remember that Sufis were one of the important group of people who actually entered the Indian subcontinent. Yeah, and because of that, the whole cultural life in India changed to a major extent, right? So that's that. Any questions still there before we actually move on to talk about the Islamic tradition, guys? In case you all have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can now enter the actually, I would say, like, this sub-theme is a little bit difficult, but if you pay attention, it's not. Yeah, so I would highly recommend you all to please pay attention. Okay, Aditi says clear, ma'am. Thanks for responding, Aditi. Okay, so now we'll move on to talk about the next sub-theme, which is new strands in the fabric, which is Islamic tradition. There's something new coming up in the Indian sphere, especially in terms of culture and religion. What is that new thing? Islamic traditions, right? Even though Islam as a religion was founded in like 7th century itself, it did not spread to India much until the Delhi Sultanate people actually came in the 13th century, right? So from the 13th century itself, these Islamic traditions became very, very popular in India. Yeah. Okay. Rakesh is here with us. Good evening, Rakesh. Cool. Okay, so that being said, related to the new strands, we'll start off with Islamic tradition, right? So just as the regions within the subcontinent were not isolated from one another, yeah. Again, what does this mean? That people within the Indian subcontinent are always closely connected, either through trade, either through religious affairs, either through political affairs, whatever it is. People are thoroughly connected with one another. They are not isolated, right? They have so much of freedom to connect with one another, and just like that, people in India are also connected to people abroad. When I say abroad, I'm referring to the Central Asian lands and all specifically, right? Because especially through land and seas, this trade has been happening with people. Yeah. For example, Arab merchants from Arabia, they have been frequently visiting the west coast of India. Yeah, all of these Konkan coast, Malabar coast, these are the western coasts, right? They have been very frequently visiting the western coast, especially in the first millennium CE. And why are they doing that? They are doing it because they wanted to trade with Indian subcontinent. Because as most of us know, Indian subcontinent is full of resources. We have so many spices, we have so many jewels, precious stones, right? So they wanted to trade with India, and that is why they started to establish relations with the western coast of India. This is happening via the sea route. Yeah. In the same manner, there are Central Asian people. Yeah. They actually tried to enter India for the same purpose. Yeah, for trading. But they didn't come through the sea. In fact, they came via the land. Yeah. And they came and mostly settled in the northwestern parts of the subcontinent. All of this was happening in the same period, right? So from the 7th century itself, when Islam was actually born, let's say, yeah, these regions became part of what is often termed the Islamic world, because Islamic people actually settled in these places. Yeah, for example, northwestern part like present day Pakistan, Afghanistan and all, they actually became a part of the so-called Islamic world, right? So that's Islamic traditions. Okay, any questions still here? Oh, okay, so you Mahima, right? I'll remember it, Mahima. Thanks for joining, by the way. Okay, just give me 5-10 minutes, guys. I'll wind this up. I know it's already 7, but like, just give me 5-10 minutes. Okay, first let's talk about the faiths of rulers and subjects, right? As in, which religions did actually people follow, or which religion did the actual king follow, right? So, in 711, yeah, there was an Arab general by name Muhammad Qasim. Again, this is like a whole story, yeah. We're not going into the details of it, but just remember that in the year 711, a person by name Muhammad Qasim, who was the general of the Arab Empire. Yeah, he actually invaded Sindh, and he was actually successful in conquering Sindh. He made Sindh as a part of the Arab Empire, right? Which means that it was under the part of Caliph now. Again, going back to 11th class Central Islamic land, right? You know all of these rules as to Caliph was the head of the Islamic world, and because Sindh is now a part of the Islamic world, Caliph has the right to rule Sindh, right? So that happened in 711, right in the starting of the 8th century, right? And later what happened till almost 13th century, these Turkish people, Afghan people, they came and established the Delhi Sultanate, right? All of these 5 dynasties which together constitute the Delhi Sultanate, right? And then after that they started spreading into the southern part of Indian subcontinent, because we have all of these Bijapur Sultans, Bidar Sultans, Golconda, Ahmednagar. All of these rulers were also Muslim rulers, right? They established themselves in the Deccan part. Because the rulers are Muslims, yeah, subjects matlab like ordinary people, yeah, people also sometimes got influenced because of these Islamic rulers, yeah. Some people, right, they're like blind followers of the king. They're like, if king is following Islam, let me also follow Islam. So again, things like that, they started affecting the religious sphere of the Indian subcontinent. People started converting their religion and stuff like that. Yeah, and after Delhi Sultanates, after Deccan Sultanates, there was another important empire in India who were also Muslim rulers, the great Mughals. Right, we'll talk about them in the next chapters. But Mughals are also very famous as Muslim rulers. Right, in fact they had their dominance till almost 18th century in India, right? So again, we're just looking at what sort of rulers ruled India and what religion did these rulers follow. Mainly it was Islam, right? So make note of that point. So again, like theoretically, or like at least the paper, or the as far as the documents of Islam religion says, that these Muslim rulers, they are supposed to be guided by a person called as ulama or ulema sometimes. Yeah. So who are these ulemas? Uh, Again, if you Google it, or if you like find it in the dictionary, it says ulemas are actually scholars of Islamic studies. They know everything about Islam, right? Be it in terms of religious affairs, be it in terms of juridical affairs, be it in terms of what provisions are actually supposed to be followed by people who are Muslims. So all of these rules and regulations, ulemas are scholars who know these rules, right? So these ulemas, they are also supposed to guide Muslim rulers, right, according to the Sharia law. They have a certain law which is called as Sharia. So Muslim rulers are supposed to do anything according to the Sharia law, right? That's what the Muslim documents say, or at least the Sharia law states. But the situation in Indian subcontinent was a little bit complicated. It was kind of complex. Why? Why is that so? Because the rulers are Muslims. Yeah, agreed. Like Delhi Sultanate, Mughals, Deccan Sultanate rulers. The rulers are Muslims. The top administration of the empire is a Sharia-run empire, right? But if you look at the common people, ordinary people, they are not Muslims. They are like either Hindus or Veerashaivites or Alvars, Niners, Buddhists, Jainists, any other religion except Muslims, right? So that is why there was always some sort of clash between the ordinary people and the rulers, and that is why it's a little bit of complicated scenario, especially in India. That is why all of these ulema rules, Sharia rules, they were not applicable to India because of the difference in religions, right? So usually Sharia document states that a Muslim ruler is only supposed to protect the Muslim population and not any other population. right? So keep this point as the backdrop, then you will understand the next point, right? So again, what are we talking about? That Sharia actually states that Muslim rulers are only supposed to protect Muslim people, like Muslim commoners, and not any other religion people. So, but again, when we come to India, we don't have Muslim people. Then who are the kings going to protect? Major question. So now what did Indian rulers do? They had this amazing idea that they will tax the people. Yeah, they will tax, and this tax was called as jizya, right? And why are they taxing people? Why are people actually paying this tax? Because if these people actually pay tax, then the king will provide protection to these non-Muslim communities, right? It's like an exchange thing. You pay me the tax, I'll protect you. If you don't pay me the tax, I won't protect you. Let somebody come and rob you, let somebody come and beat you up, I don't care. I'm not going to provide you protection. So that was some kind of exchange between the rulers and the common people by paying a certain tax called as jizya. Except the Muslims, all other people paid. Jews, Christians, Alvars, Niners, everybody paid this tax except the Muslim community, because Muslims by default they are supposed to be protected by the Muslim ruler anyways. Yeah, it's like a but obvious thing. It's a default thing. But these non-Muslims had to pay tax in order to be protected, right? So yeah, so that was a scene which was happening in terms of protection. Yeah. Uday, classes are going to be only in English, fortunately or unfortunately, because I'm not well versed in Hindi. I don't know to speak Hindi. So yeah, these classes are going to be only in English, Uday. Okay, Aditi has a question. What is subcontinent? Okay, so subcontinent, I mean, listen, back in those days, right, like even before partition and all, Sri, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, all of these were part of the Indian, I won't say Indian, but like one land. Yeah, they had like a similar landmass. Back in those times, even Pakistan was a part of India, right? So this whole territory, yeah, including Sri Lanka sometimes, yeah, was referred to as the subcontinent. That is why we call it as the Indian subcontinent. It's not a continent. It's some part of the continent, right? Again, to just give a name to it, randomly we used to call it as Indian subcontinent. But if you want to refer to the only India right now, then call it only India. Yeah, don't call it the subcontinent. But if you're referring to you, and if you want to include parts like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Bangladesh and all, then call it as the Indian subcontinent. Right? I hope that is clear, Aditi. Okay. Okay, like how else did rulers behave? Yeah, that's one important point. So, especially Mughal rulers, right? Like, again, as far as the Sharia law states, that Mughal rulers are only, not just Mughals, but like Muslim rulers are supposed to be rulers of only for Muslims, right? But again, Mughals went against the tradition of Sharia and they claimed themselves to be emperors of all people, irrespective of their religion, right? So again, these are all the things that the Indian Muslim rulers are doing against the Sharia law. They are going against their own religious books. That is why ulemas had a problem. Yeah. So that's one thing. And because they are living with Hindu people, they are living with some sort of Jewish people, these Muslim rulers actually had a flexible policy towards their subjects, right? For example, giving tax exemptions. Yeah. Hindu people, Jain people, Christians, Zoroastrians are like present day Parsis, right? All of these people, because king wanted to impress his subjects, for example, Mughals, right? Mughals wanted to impress his subjects. That is why emperors like Akbar, emperors like Aurangzeb, they often granted these tax exemptions, yeah, in order to win over their subjects, in order to impress their subjects, right? So, again, what is the basic point of all of these? That Muslim rulers are actually doing some sort of activities which is against their own religion. Yeah? So, that's what was happening back in those times in the Indian subcontinent. Uh, I think it's almost time. I'll stop here. I still have a couple of slides to cover, but like we'll talk about it in the next class, right? It's already 7:10. Okay, so that basically brings us to the end of the class. Yeah, we fairly talked about scenario in the northern part, especially after the Islamic rulers came into the subcontinent, right? Any questions you have regarding today's topic, today's session in general, please let me know in the chat box. We can quickly clarify. Keep typing your questions, guys. I'll try to wind this up in the meanwhile. Okay. Again, I've already told this in the last class, but it's not too late to join because this crash course actually started only a couple of days back. I think it's been a week or 10 days. Yeah. It's a crash course specially designed for 12th standard students, humanities students to ace their term 1 boards. Yeah. These are the educators here for different subjects, right? The medium of delivery is English and it's a 1.5 month crash course. I highly recommend you all to join it. It will be very, very helpful for your term 1 boards. So the link for that is in the description below of this video. Go check it out if you haven't checked it out already. It's highly helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. I highly appreciate it on a Friday evening. Thanks, guys. And finally, as soon as the live stream ends, if you like the content of this video, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy and scholars in particular. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks anyway for tuning in. The next class we'll be having is on Sunday. Right? Sunday, it's not an evening class. Rather, on Sunday, we'll be having a morning class, which is 11 a.m. class. Right? We'll meet and talk about the remaining portion of this chapter. Right? It'll be like a part 3 of chapter 6. So I'll see you guys again on Sunday to talk about this. Until then, if you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, I will end the class. Okay, cool. I don't see any questions. Therefore, I'll wind this up. Okay, so thanks anyways. I'll see you on Sunday in the morning at 11. Till then, have a good weekend. Yeah, Saturday, Sunday, have a good weekend. I'll see you soon. Take care, guys. Bye.